All right, perfect. Recording again. Ozzy, thank you for coming in and joining me on my podcast.
Of
So
course.
glad to have you here. It's been such a great thing to do because, like I was just saying, it's allowed me to connect with people that I haven't seen since I've moved to Boston. And I'm having a great time doing it.
Good. Yeah,
So, what?
so was it all the kind of recent uproar that made you decide to start this?
Yeah, a lot of it was based off of that. And I had done one in the past, but I canceled it because I just didn't like how it was going. And
Okay.
then the recent uproar started, and I thought to myself, okay, what can I do right now to somehow make the world a better place in a way without putting a
Yeah.
lot of responsibility on me? So it's just like, let's do this. It'll be fun. It'll get a lot of really interesting people that I know to share a lot of really interesting stories and insight. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of smart friends. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of smart intellectual friends with great insight. So it's just been amazing to do. So, but yeah, I know you wanted to come on today because I had posted something on Facebook, and for those of you that don't have my Facebook, it was a really a really emotionally charged message
Very
that,
raw.
yeah, that was just kind of based on some of my experiences growing up in Toronto. And a lot of people believe that we as Canadians don't have the same race issues that America does, and that's a complete lie.
Mhm.
It's something that exists. So I wanted to go out there and I wanted to turn to the people that would be able to see it and share my story, which that was a condensed version of it, but also remind them that, yeah, some of you are part of what the problem was when I was younger, but it doesn't mean that that has to be your legacy. Like at any
Mhm.
point in time, you can turn things around and you can change and you can teach the next generation better and more open-minded things. What was the one thing that you took away from it?
So I will say, and I think I messaged you about it, is I, not that I'm part of the people who think that there is no racism here. I think there's racism everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I am, and I was more so part of the people who thought that comparing it to the United States is not even on the same like comparable
Yeah.
plane here. Um, but hearing the little stories, those really make a difference. So while I still think some of our laws and rights and systemic issues might not be quite as bad, why is it even a comparison, right? So now
Yeah.
my eyes are opened up a little more to, is it enough to just say, well, we're not as bad as them? What
Yeah.
does that even say?
I,
Why don't we just try to be better all around?
yeah. No, that's a great point because at the same time, you think to yourself, okay, so we as Canadians have this. There's this connotation behind the word Canada that is the nicest, friendliest people, and people wherever you go, I love to travel and bring something Canadian with me because it just turns into, oh my God, you're from Canada, you guys are the greatest people ever. And I think it helps us hide behind our issues. But yeah, to just be better than the United States in those issues is not enough. I think if we are going to bring about a change that clearly the world is on board for, which is absolutely amazing. Like I've never seen something that is touching every single country. And at that point, it's our responsibility to be better, to do better.
100%.
That's, it's our responsibility to take note of what's going on around us and take stock of some of the things that we've done in our past that probably were, less than great, and say, okay, I've made my mistakes in the past, but now is my opportunity to shape the future.
Yeah. So the thing that really stuck out with your video was when you told the story about your teacher.
Yeah, that's a real story.
Uh, thank you. Like, yeah, like that's a crazy story. I thought to myself, I was like, okay, there's the casual racism that
Yeah,
sometimes we forgive grandparents for
yeah,
and certain things like that. And then there's a teacher who affects
Yeah,
your marks, who affects how you think of yourself growing up and what other teachers think of you. And that was alarming. So of course I understand it could be a one-off, but let's be honest, I'm sure many people can share that story.
absolutely. Well, I'll tell the story just so people know exactly what you're talking about. So, when I was in elementary school that I went to, when I got there, I had transferred from another school nearby, and instantaneously, it wasn't easy for me to make friends in that school. Definitely had a lot of issues like getting along with kids, and then that created. Oh, are we getting some?
Sorry, we've got
No, I love it. I love it.
we've got doggy. It's okay. Yeah, totally fine. That's Stella, our neighbor's dog.
Yeah, I love it. I love
They,
it. This
they
is
pretend that they don't like each other, but they like each other.
this is the raw nature of a podcast. I absolutely love that. I love because what's your dog's name again?
Chloe.
Chloe was not paying attention to anything, and all of a sudden another dog showed up, and now
Yeah.
Chloe is like aware.
Yeah. And she's gonna start not to care again in 3 seconds.
But yeah, so it was hard for me to adjust to being in this new school. Didn't really make friends well, and it definitely turned into a situation where I was definitely lashing out against the school or lashing out against kids that I went to school with, and which is like a whole different discussion into how bullying affects your experience as a child.
Sure.
Um, but being labeled as a problem kid within the school, it's something that you don't realize it's happening until you start paying attention to some of the comments that the teachers are making towards you.
Yeah. And at
And
such a young age, how would you have even put that together though?
exactly, because I'm just thinking and I remember specifically when my teacher, when she was retiring and she told me, hey, the teachers in this school view you as a problem. And every single one of them says bad things about you. When I was getting you into my class, the first thing that they said is, well, you need to watch out for Rashard because Rashard's a problem kid. He's going to cause trouble. He's going to do this and that. But nobody really, at that point in time, took a step back and said, well, why? Why is he causing trouble? What's going on? Because clearly, the grades aspect is there. I didn't fail a class ever.
Right.
So there's got to be another route to the issue. And then when I was in a different grade, a teacher told me that I'd never make it out of high school because of how many problems I caused. So it's things, it's things like that start it. And then as you grow up, I remember going into my high school and being accused of abuse. The teacher wanted to say I was trying to abuse her because I was disrupting her class. And she wanted to get the local police involved because I was disrupting her class. It was the craziest thing ever. Um, but we don't realize that these little things that teachers are telling kids are creating a platform that's going to shape their minds moving forward.
Yeah.
And you're putting that sense of doubt into a kid's mind of their own concept of self-value.
Yeah. And into other kids' minds.
Yeah.
If being said out loud, I mean, I'm not sure if
Oh
other
yeah. A few of them, a few teachers have um really talked down to me, if not embarrassed me in front of my classmates, thus like making me seem as though I'm less than them.
right.
And it's not helpful at
No,
all.
no.
And we don't really understand like what that does, because now you have allowed your view of me in a lesser manner allows the other students in that school to view me in a lesser manner,
Yeah.
and it shapes how they interact with me. It shapes their relationships with me, moving forward.
Hmm.
Mind you, a lot of those kids in that school, I don't really talk to them too much, but when I do meet them, I've never had a problem. We've all been very happy and cordial, and
Sure.
I don't think we really, draw back on those things too much.
Yeah.
But it's something that, we all play our part in it. We all play our part in allowing everyone to feel comfortable, whether they're, whatever they identify with gender wise, whatever their color of their skin is, whatever their heritage is. Like, that's not, like, you shouldn't be, as a teacher, leading that. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say that's kind of the main difference. Like when people talk about Canada and the US, as you brought up earlier. So the
Hmm.
only thing that I would say is yes, there's individual responsibility here in that people act a certain way because of their preconceived notions. So that teacher and moving on and will shape other people's thoughts. Now, can I point to any laws in our system which encourage that? I can't. Whereas I
No.
can do that in some other places.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think the comparison needs to happen. I don't think we should make ourselves feel better by thinking that we're better than the US. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing that really I would want to say about that is, does it exist here? Yes. Does it exist in the same manner that laws and policies will stop you from certain things? Now, I will admit that I do not know enough of the things that our indigenous population goes through.
Yeah.
So I'm
Same.
sure that someone else having this discussion with you could probably pick on some of the things I just said
Yeah.
and bring forth some policies. And I'd be very open to that, of course.
Yeah. I will say this, when, and just from the moment of being here and watching how things play out or how things work, and then you understand that, well, why is there, you know, a problem with black voters showing out, is that, well, a lot of black voters don't know where to go, because where they think they need to go is not where they should be. Like, you got to register to vote, but you got to go all the way over here to register.
Yeah.
And in the state of Missouri, I believe, all the voter registration stations are far away from where minorities live.
Yeah.
There was this whole thing that was happening where they were, I believe, during Hillary Clinton's election, they were loading up buses full of minorities and driving them out to voter registrations, because the place that you vote might be close to your house because legally it has to be there, but the place that you register to vote is nowhere close to your house.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily have a lot of the same systemic issues that are based off of um, laws the way that it is here. But it's, like you said, just to say that we're not as bad is not good enough.
No.
It's not. The goal should be to consistently improve ourselves and consistently be better, and not just take "we're okay" for an accepted answer. Like, being
Oh,
okay is not enough.
absolutely. It's funny that you brought up the voter suppression, basically, because Andrew Yang, when he was running, he was someone that I highly supported.
Uh-huh.
He actually wanted to make election day a national holiday,
Yeah.
and why not? And actually, why not? So I don't know. Are you voting there? I don't know what
No,
your
I can't vote. I can't vote.
Okay.
I'm not
So
legally
I
allowed.
have cousins who are American, of course, and they are actually in Boston, Massachusetts based.
What?
One of them,
I should hang out with them.
yeah, recently moved to, well, not recently, it's been 6 years. She moved to Texas.
Ah,
Um, Now, she was telling me stories about uh, lineups and how long it takes to vote.
yep.
And she was discussing how her boyfriend stood in line for like 3 hours just to get his vote in,
Yeah.
and I thought it was just insane. And she was like, "Well, no, it's because," and she's very liberal, but she was kind of using these American things that are things that she knows. It's not her fault. Like that's
Yeah.
what she knows. She was like, "Well, it's because they had this preliminary thing and then this and then this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Listen, I've never waited more than 5 minutes to vote.
Yeah.
Ever,
Yeah.
ever." And
I
I was
walk
like,
in
"They
and just
check
like, this is
your
my
ID."
ballot. Here
Yeah.
you go.
I was like, they check your ID, you've got your ballot form, like you go in, you going in one at a time. Never has it taken me more than 5 minutes from parking to exiting. And that's something that, like, if you don't know that that's how other countries work, then you think the 3-hour wait is normal.
Yeah,
It's not.
it's
That's not
not.
normal.
It's not normal at
People have
all.
2 jobs. People have children. People sometimes have not enough funds to get a babysitter. So, how is it a civic duty when you're not making it available to everybody without them taking on an expense or taking time off work?
Yeah, well, they do have the y- you can go up to your boss and say that I'm leaving work right now to go vote, and they can't say no to you. But at
Yeah,
the same time, it's like, but you're not going to get paid for. So it's like you said, it takes 3-4 hours to vote. So you can go up to your boss and say, I'm gonna go vote, but you also have to clock out for 4 hours
right.
if the voter station is nearby. So if the voter station is not even nearby where you live or where you work, you got to clock out, go wherever you need to, drive all the way back to work. It's just so complex. Um, yeah, no, that's something that absolutely happens here. The whole thing is, even I and my buddy Wade, who is the smartest guy I know on the whole thing, helps explain it to me, and I still don't get it from time to time. I try, but I will say the Canadian system of elections and voting is so much simpler.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they seriously make it rocket science there.
Yeah, it's you experience the whole thing like but to get back to what we were saying, to experience the growing up in Toronto and experiencing how racism works in Toronto and how racism works in America. And I've always said, and I say this to a lot of people, say, well, Canadians aren't racist. I'm like, well, yes, they are, but American racism is a little bit in your face. And you can stand somewhere, someone says something racist, and then you're just like, oh yeah, this guy right here, this guy
Yeah.
right here is the one. Whereas in Canada, you're not sure. You're not sure that this person
Yeah.
says something. I, you know, I remember I went I went skating. I went skating at Nathan Phillips Square one year, and me and my friends were out there. And I remember we were talking, and this woman comes up to us, and she says to me, uh, "So interesting to see you on the ice." And I'm looking at her like, this can't go well. This is not about to go well. But you have to indulge. So I go, because I'm an inquisitive person. I need to know. So I ask her, well, why do you say that? She's like, well, your people don't usually skate. Well, and now I'm an asshole, because now I'm just like, I know where she's going, but I got to continue to mess with her. I'm thinking, my people. I'm like, guys,
Canadians? Because
what are you what are you trying to what are you trying to tell me? And then she's like, no, black people, you guys don't skate, but you must be born here, because that's why you know how to do it. And I heard that, and my friend, she looked at me and she was just shocked. She's dumbfounded, because she doesn't know how to
yeah,
react to it.
yeah.
And I looked at her. I'm like, no, this is nothing new. This happens all the time. I,
Oh,
I mess with people when it happens too, but it's a real thing that people are confused about, and it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
yeah. And I think the problem sometimes with reactions to stories like that is you see the insane levels of racism that affect people really negatively,
Yeah,
and they're horrific and they're violent. And then you hear a story like that, and sometimes because you've been exposed to the really horrible violent ones, you think, well, she didn't mean any harm. She was just,
yeah,
and that's problematic because if we let those pass over and over and over again, that's when you end up with these generations of people who
absolutely.
are now all of a sudden okay with something more.
Yeah,
Where does
absolutely.
it end?
Yeah, for me, it's just a lot of it just kind of comes from my mom and my upbringing, which you can't. She just kind of taught me, you can't fight every single fight, and sometimes you want to talk back, but you just got to let these people. You got to let it roll off your sleeve, and or roll off your shoulder, whichever the term is. I think it's roll off your shoulder. But she always told me the rules of going out, and I also drew to that in that video where I was saying that there are different rules for Black people when they leave home. And that's really where the problem starts, is a lot of people don't realize that, when a Black person leaves their home, they don't enter the world the same way as everybody else, because there's so many more things that you need to be aware about. For me,
Yeah.
I always know what my surroundings are. I'm
Mhm.
always taking in the information because I am always concerned about where I am and what situation I am in, and am I compromised in any way? Because these are the things that Black parents are telling their kids is, uh, most, like, this is rule number one in a Black family, is anytime you go into a shopping center or a mall or whatever, if you buy anything, keep the receipt. Not because you want to return it. It's that you
Mhm.
don't want to be stopped by any security or mall employer or whatever and accuses you of stealing it, and you don't have the receipt to prove that you bought it. Um, that's like rule number one. All right. I always get told you have to be seen and not heard, because if people can hear you, they're going to assume you're up to something, and that's when they start calling the cops and they say, "Oh, these Black kids over here, let's go see what they're up to." Um, what else is a common one? Don't touch anything. Don't touch anything in the store unless you plan on buying it, because if people see you touching stuff, they'll think you're stealing it. Uh, it's a lot. A lot goes into the Black people leaving their home and then just getting on the train,
Yeah.
driving their car. Because, you know, even I walk around my neighborhood at night where I live, or I've walked down many neighborhoods, but it's so common that when I'm walking down the street, I'll see white people walking towards me. And as they get closer to me, miraculously, they need to be on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
And it's and you just see that so many times that it just becomes normal. You don't even realize that, but that's something, like, it's the subtlest form of racism, but at the same time it needs to stop. And I get it. No matter who you are at night, people walking around, it's kind of scary. uh but sometimes we need to not show that fear,
Yeah.
and show people that I accept that you're going to walk by me and I'm going to walk by you. We'll, say hello as we pass.
Yeah. So actually, you saying that, we just had a discussion about that with a friend of mine 2 days ago.
Hmm.
He brought up the fact he is mixed race, and he brought up the fact that he was walking, and of course, a lady who was walking by clutched her purse a little bit tighter
Oh
as
yeah.
he came by. And someone else then brought up the point that, I mean, I really wish they hadn't brought this up. But they said, could it be that it had nothing to do with you and that you were perhaps looking for this because of the heightened tension? So, yes, it could be, but lots of things could be. What was that? A spaghetti monster flying around in God? Things could be. And you're
Yeah.
right. Sometimes maybe people do look for things after they've experienced something so many times, but that's why they're looking for it. So if they're looking for it, that means it has
There's a
happened.
reason. There's a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um I actually have a good story with that. My cousin works at Google in San Francisco.
Mm.
And when they go into the building, it is very common practice to ask to see each other's badges if they're walking in behind someone else. So if they're holding the door open, it's
Yeah.
very common practice to say, like, can I see your badge? Just to
Yeah.
make sure. Obviously, it makes sense. So he does that to everybody, no matter what. And this one time, uh, the person did happen to be Black, and he became very offended because he thought that the only reason my cousin was asking is because he was Black.
Mm.
Whereas this is something that he's been doing the whole tenure of his time there.
Yeah.
So I use that as an example, but then I said, you know, my cousin didn't think, oh, this guy's awful. He thought to himself, goodness gracious, how many times has this person experienced such an awful thing that he automatically thought I was also doing that? So
Yeah.
instead of just picking on the person and saying, could it be that you were mistaken? Let's talk about why somebody could be led to make that mistake.
Yeah. No, well, there's, and my buddy calls it a whataboutism, where,
Yeah.
where he says, one person will make this point, and to counteract that point, instead of bringing up actual constructive facts, the person
Yeah.
will say, well, what about this? Well, what about, no, we're trying to assess this point. And yeah, your cousin's completely right. Like, and it happens to a lot of Black people, and that's why Black people are constantly on edge at times, because
Yeah.
you find yourself in a position where I'm being asked this, and even though it's a routine question that everybody gets asked, but it's been presented to you in so many negative ways before, that when it gets presented to you, you start feeling, oh, this person doesn't believe that I can do this. It's I've had situations where um what was it? I was walking through my neighborhood in Toronto, and I got pulled over by a Toronto police officer, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm going home. Do you have any ID?" "No." "Literally just went for a walk."
Yeah.
It's like, well, if do you live here? I'm like, yes, I'll tell you my address. I can tell you how to get there. He gave me the whole runaround. He's like, well, I stopped you because someone fitting your description
Of
is,
course.
is we're looking for someone fitting your description around here. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because if you were, the first thing that you would have done is you would have arrested me. If I fit the description of someone you're looking for, you would have arrested me and then brought me in and then figured out that I wasn't who you thought I was, and then sent me along my way. But because you just stopped me for no real reason,
Yeah.
you're looking for something. And then you get stopped later on in life, and like, then you start thinking that you call back on that same experience, and they build and build and build. So when the guy going into work at Google gets stopped and asks for his ID, he's now like, "What? I'm Black. I can't come into work."
Right.
So it's a lot of people don't. It's the concept of asking more questions, right? A lot of people don't realize that. Okay, so this guy's acting this way. Well, oh, here you go, Black people feeling offended again, and
Right.
it's and it's not Black people feeling offended again. It's, here is a circumstance that this person has been living with their entire life. So, and it's been traumatic to them. So when it gets thrown back in, it's kind of like when you adopt a dog, and if that dog's previous owner had something in their apartment that they used that was traumatic to the dog, when
Yeah.
you bring that dog into your home, you might be the nicest person ever, but when the dog sees that item, it's going to go crazy. Not to
For
compare
sure.
humans to dogs, but
No.
the psychology of it is similar. But yeah, the tough part is that we don't ask ourselves the questions. We don't ask ourselves, okay, why is this happening? What is going on? And how do we shift to allow people to feel comfortable? Because, like I had previously said, it takes a lot of preparation for Black people to leave their home and then just to feel comfortable walking down the street. And a lot of it it's shape shifting. I like to say that most professional Black people speak two languages, right? I speak three, and which is, I speak work, I speak when I'm around island people because my heritage is from the Caribbean,
Yeah.
and then I have Black, which is
Okay.
when I'm around Black people.
Okay.
And yeah, it's interesting because every Black person is, once we get to that level of educated, we all think to ourselves, okay, well, the way that I speak to other Black people or the way I speak to other islanders, I can't speak to white people like that because they won't respect me. right? So I got to speak to them the way that they want me to speak to them in order for them to accept me and, take what I'm saying seriously,
Hmm.
which is an absolutely absurd concept.
Yeah. But I get it. Like, you're right. I think it's absurd, but I understand.
It's like, yeah, if I came in dropping F-bombs and saying some crazy slang, absolutely don't listen to me. I'm out of my mind. But at the same time, there's still things that I wish I could say, and they're not even slang. They're just things that I wish I could say, or ways that I could phrase things or refer to things. And this is not even just in the work environment. It's just around white people in general. Because if you don't talk to them that way, they look at you like, oh, you're beneath me. I can't listen to you anymore. And I think that's a great place for white people to start, or all people, is don't force people to adapt to what you want just to make yourself feel comfortable.
Yeah, so we can make that even a little bit more micro, actually, because
Yeah. Yeah, let's
don't,
do it.
because look, in terms of people judging people because of the way they speak a certain accent or whatnot, the people in the South, actually, of the US constantly complain about this as well, right? It's funny because there's a lot of marginalizing that happens within that population, but they notice that, when you have a Missouri accent, then
Yeah.
oftentimes you might be made fun of. People might assume that you're uneducated. People might
Yeah.
assume that you're racist. People might assume a lot of things because you are from the South. So it's amazing how you can kind of take that into tiny, 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 even tinier portions,
Yeah.
and kind of just tells you about human nature. Like, is it ever really going to be
Whew.
equality? Are we ever really gonna be all about equity?
It's oh man. I mean, the tough part about all of that is unteaching years of bad teaching.
Yeah.
It's undoing all the negativity that has been laid upon people. I make this joke with my friends sometimes, is that sometimes we just got to wait for some of these racists to die. Like, we're just not going to change them. We just got to wait for them to die, maybe get to the next generation, fix those guys first, put a lot of effort into them. But, is it ever? Hopefully it's going to be, but small steps, small steps. Small things that we need to start taking stock of and realizing that these things can't happen anymore, right? You know whether a person is educated, uneducated, sounds uneducated, you don't know this person's story, but it doesn't give you the justifiable reason to then discriminate against them, right?
Mhm.
If you know and it needs to stop happening amongst other uh races. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how, like, Asian people do not do well with black people. But also uh I learned from some people that Asian, like, Chinese media really presents black people in a very, very negative light, and the Chinese media also controls everything that they see. So when they come to America or Canada for the first time, the only thing that they know about black people is what I think it's called the CCP has been telling them their entire life. So,
And they're just heavily corrupt and really filter everything
but it's
through. Yeah. So
it's an opportunity for us to say, okay, this is what I've been taught. This is something that someone's been telling me to do, but you don't have to listen to it,
right.
right? Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to listen.
It's
You,
a form of radicalization, though. It's
yeah,
very difficult. Like, it's psychological warfare that they've had
yeah.
planted on them in a way.
That's the extreme, but on a more minuscule level, or not minuscule, whatever the word I want is, or like a smaller whatever, is that, for example, what's a good one? if you live in a neighborhood where your parent is constantly telling you not to hang out with that one family because that's the black family, you can't, like, just because your father's telling you this nonsense doesn't mean he's right.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not. He doesn't mean he's right. You could go over there and meet that family and realize that they're great people and that you should hang out with them, or they're shitty people and you shouldn't. But the color of the skin is not the
Why they're
deciding. Yeah, like
yeah.
shitty people are shitty in all, in every country. They're not just. It's not
That's
just
why
one
it makes
thing.
That's why it makes some of the sharing of some of these videos so insane. Like you'll see people who are completely against these protests sharing, videos of black people doing bad things. You're just like,
Yeah.
we're not saying all black people are amazing. This is not the conversation we're having. Like, how
Yeah.
is what you're doing? The same way that we're not saying all police officers are terrible. Like,
We're saying
oh,
that there is a problem. And
yes,
until we can figure out a way to solve it, that we need to make sure that our voices get heard.
exactly. It's
Which,
You
yeah.
brought up something really interesting when you said when you said, well, maybe we need to wait for these races to die, because when Trump was first elected, and there has been a statistical surge in certain hate crimes. We
Because
can't
they
deny.
think that their guy is in the White House. They think that
Yeah,
that's their guy.
yeah,
These racists have been sitting down in their basements eating fucking Doritos and smelling in and breathing their own farts for the last fucking 10 years or so because they felt like they had to crawl under a bridge like trolls because Obama was in office.
yeah.
But as soon as Trump came in, they all came out with their fucking MAGA hats and said, "Oh, this is the guy. This is the guy that's gonna fight for me. He's gonna make white America a great place to be again." And
Yeah.
no, that's not the guy.
Well, it's just funny because people started to, pose the question of like, these people are coming out of the woodwork, and like, where are they coming from? And they've been living in our midst. And I'm thinking, okay, the civil rights movement of the 60s, like, I very vividly remember reading about a little girl going to school for the first time in a school that was all white, and she needed police escort. I remember reading about a young girl walking to college, and it's a very famous photo. I don't remember it, but she was spat on so many times uh, that this dress that her mother had handmade for her needed to be thrown out because it was
Oh,
just covered in other people's saliva. And I'm thinking, sorry, what do you think happened to those people? Do you
yeah,
think because the law came out, they all of a sudden changed their minds? They lived, they bred, their children now vote.
yeah. Like,
So
people don't
there's still,
realize slavery was a thing not that long ago, and that most likely, if you are what, if you were maybe 70, if you're 70 or 80, you have recollection of your parents telling you like vivid stories about them owning slaves, and you have these like plantations, like how,
mhm,
they're still there.
yeah. I actually visited one in
They're beautiful
Georgia.
though. They're very
They
beautiful.
are gorgeous. I did visit one in Georgia, and the thing that actually made me a little bit upset by this media outrage of this specific um, plantation that I visited is they have turned it into a mini museum
Uh-huh.
where the horrific acts are discussed. So it's not just ignored and said, look at our beautiful trees and whatnot. So it
Okay.
has been turned into a little bit of an educational place, but they also hold weddings and celebrations there because it really is beautiful,
Listen, it is.
beautiful. So how do you feel about that? Because
it's
they were
it's
they were
it's
canceled. They got so
it is a they're beautiful places that such evil things happened.
yeah.
It's hard to really think about it. Like, I know bad things happen here, but the architecture is just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird moments where you're just like, tear it
Yeah.
down, but like keep the outside looking the same.
Hmm.
Um, no, I don't. I've never been to a plantation, but I know they're out there. I do want to visit one to just see it and maybe get an understanding. Maybe I'll go where you went if it's still around.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It was in Savannah, and
Okay,
the name
which I
starts
heard
with
is
you. It is gorgeous.
I gotta go. I got family down in Georgia, and I try to go down there as frequently as I can now, but can't go anywhere. But I will visit it because I do want to go visit a plantation to just understand the history of what happened down there. But
Georgia is a very conflicting place. You've got this like southern hospitality, and then
yeah.
you've got just absolute racism.
Well,
And
it's it's well, Atlanta's the blackest city in the United States. There's more black people per capita in Atlanta than any other city in the country.
yeah,
Um, and yet the owner of the basketball team wants to make the crowd more white.
right.
Um, but good on the NBA for sniffing that out and getting rid of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Atlanta was and that's another thing. So Atlanta, I went to it with some misconceptions because whether it's just constantly been reported a certain way, I was expecting a very different place. And it is gorgeous. It runs well. It is safe. There's art,
yeah,
culture. It's fantastic. And, I judged myself a little bit because I thought, why did I allow my brain to be filled with all these misconceptions of like a crime riddled city? And is it because they just have a high black population that this is how it was presented to me? Or,
it's because Fox News. That's why.
right, but I'm not even a Fox News watcher.
But it
Why did
spreads. It spreads. The information once it gets out there, it just takes a couple people to see it, and then
Yeah.
it gets twisted and manipulated, and finally it gets to you, and you have no clue that where it came from, but you're seeing it in front of you, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, Atlanta's a dangerous place." It's not. It's very nice.
It's great. We really, really enjoyed ourselves
Very
there.
nice. It's
And
got great suburbs. It's got great suburbs. Now,
really,
will I say that does Atlanta have certain areas of it that are stricken by poverty? Yes. And in those impoverished areas, are there higher crime rates? Yes.
of
But
course.
that happens everywhere. And if you go
Everywhere.
to Atlanta and you walk around, like you get to go to the Coca-Cola Museum and it's clean as hell.
Yeah. We were actually at that CNN building that was being
Yeah.
attacked a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, oh, I was there. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. Atlanta is a very clean, very nice, friendly city. I walked around downtown Atlanta by myself
Yeah.
and nothing happened. People said hi to me. People were friendly. It wasn't even a problem. But
No.
would I go to one of the rougher areas of Atlanta and go hang out there? No, that's asking for trouble. But that
No.
happens. Yeah, that's every city. That's every city.
Some of
Every
the
city has
roughest,
that.
like places within cities that I've actually seen was one time when I was lost in Paris, and I have never seen a scarier place. So
Go to Detroit.
we we actually we were lost in the car once in Detroit, but yeah, I didn't get to witness any of that. But it was shocking to me because I was like, "Oh, Paris, you don't really expect that, do you?" And it was
No.
very, very rough. Like I did not want to get out of the car, and I couldn't wait to drive out of that
I took a wrong turn in Detroit once, and I was just like, "Huh,
area.
I'm not supposed to be here. I'm gonna, I'm
Yeah.
gonna get out
And
of
then
here as quickly as
you
possible."
know a lot of times people use those places statistically in a way to vilify certain races, and
Yeah.
that obviously drives me crazy because you're completely ignoring socioeconomics and
Oh
you're
yeah. Well,
ignoring the system that
the
leads to that socioeconomics. So what are you doing? And that's what wonderful people like Candace Owens do, who drive me
yeah.
absolutely crazy.
Well, the thing about Detroit is that it's not about being black in Detroit that makes it bad. It's about being poor in Detroit that makes it bad.
Yes.
That's the like, and there's something really wrong with Candace Owens. I don't know. Listen, there's something really wrong with that woman
Very
in
much
the
so.
sense of her like she can't be serious because I've watched her videos, and when I watch her videos, every single time I finish, I'm like, this can't be real, right? Like, there can't be a person who thinks like this, but
Yeah.
like, she's got to be doing this for shock value. She's got to be doing this just to promote her
For
own
career.
personal. Yeah, it's got to be like a career move, personal brand. She's, she doesn't care who likes it or who doesn't like it, but she's going to go this route because it's going to get her famous.
Yeah.
But she is
Look,
absolutely like just a combination of
actor.
naive, and she's a combination of naive and absolutely crazy. Like they're
Yeah.
this. Oh,
The thing is, though, like, I'd have to disagree with the naive. She is so intelligent. And intelligent, I think sometimes we tie intelligence to nice. So when we think someone's bad, we'll call them stupid, which is
yeah.
just the most ridiculous thing. Like, there's a lot of very, very intelligent bad people. In fact, it's the very intelligent bad people that end up being able to do the horribly terrible things.
Because they're just smarter.
Correct.
They know how to
So
grow.
yeah. So Candace is so articulate. And there are some things that she plays up on.
Oh
She's
yeah.
articulate, she's intelligent. We cannot deny that she's a very attractive woman, and she builds on those things, and she's Black. So
Yeah.
she gets to say these things that go against everything else that Black people say, and
Yeah, we got to
people
shut her down. We got to shut
yeah,
her down.
people hold on to it. And it's difficult. It's not just her. There's this ex-cop, this officer, Brandon Tatum. He also has now made a career, and they're friends. So
Of course
he
they
thinks
are.
Candace Owens is the greatest. And he makes these videos basically
They're the
talking.
Black people who like to say that Black people are the problem.
Yeah. And look, what they do is they'll take a statistic that might have a level of truth in it without any context. They'll spin that statistic. And
Oh
then
yeah.
people who don't want to look into any further and already have that little bit of racism that just needed a nudge, they feel completely validated.
Oh
So
yeah.
what they
It's
do is they take casual racists and they make them extra racist.
they're the thing about like when you do that too, it's one of those situations where someone says something to you and you don't have more questions and you're just like, no, that's right. I heard it. That's right. You need like you have a different issue where you need to do a little bit more research on your own to figure out what's going on, and you'll be shocked at what's going on around you. And in the sense of Candace Owens, because I watched that video of where she's talking about George Floyd, and the one thing that she never ever talks about in that entire video is the buildup to what makes George who he is,
Right.
right? Nobody ever said that George is a hero,
Mm,
right? What we and me and Wade were saying it is that having a fake $20 bill, which ended up being real, having drugs in your system, the sentence for that, or even the possession of drugs, the sentence for that in America is not death.
right.
And disproportionately, these non-threatening, interaction, or not initially threatening interactions with police officers tend to turn into death of a Black person.
Right.
And that's what she's not talking about. And then she's also not referencing that, she says, oh, well, and I wrote this shit down because I wanted to call.
There's so
Wrote
much
this
when it
shit
comes
down. But she starts talking about how, 19 white people were killed by police officers and 9 Black people were killed by police officers last year. And I was saying, well, even if it's like, that's yes, it's more white people were killed, but if you calculate it as a ratio based on the proportion of the population that is white versus Black,
yeah.
it's not close, right?
Right.
There's 60 million. There's 60% of the population of this country is white, which means that there are 340 million people here. 60% of that is roughly 120 million people, 115. 13% of the population here is Black, which means that there's only 30 million, 40 million Black people here. So out of 30 million Black people, 9 were killed, but of 140 white people, 19. And she's not bringing that up.
Mhm.
right? She's not talking about, and she's, well, you know, and then black people commit more violent crime. And I mean, well, you're saying all these things that might be true, but
Mhm.
you're not giving it more context, and you're not asking a lot of the right questions. If we just judge someone off of the initial thing and not ask more questions to understand where it came from, then we will never solve the problem of racism.
Yeah. And she knows the answer to that. She's
Yeah,
very, very smart. She knows
she
that. She
knows,
just,
but she knows by, like, you know, spreading her bullshit, she's gonna get viral, and people like you and I are gonna talk about her.
yeah. And
There's
look,
no
like,
such thing as bad publicity.
I don't know if you watched the new Dave Chappelle that he dropped a couple of nights ago.
No, I really do. I
So it's
absolutely
called
do.
846, and he even bashes her. And I
Yeah.
was actually surprised because you don't normally see these people make
No.
it into the mainstream. But I think it's about time that we realize that these people with these small platforms, they grow. So there was,
Exactly.
yeah, there was this girl a few years ago, Tommy Lauren, that I used to
Oh,
constantly, yeah. So
oh, I hate that woman.
I used to complain about her years ago. She was just on the blaze. What I
Yeah,
used to see from everybody was, oh my God, she's nothing. Don't worry. Well, now she's on Fox News.
she
Now
is the
she's on some
worst.
watched network. So you went from telling me that she's irrelevant to now she affects so much of the population of the United States.
she
And
is she's just the worst, because
yeah,
she, like Candace Owens, is one of those, I'm a Republican, but I'm progressive, and everything that's wrong with the world is the liberals. The liberals are
yeah.
ruining it. Oh, those two together could just, oh my God. I can only imagine those two getting into a room together and having the dumbest conversation ever, because they're both smart people. They're both
Yeah,
educated individuals, but I'm pretty sure that they don't talk about anything interesting.
I can't
It's probably just a bunch of self-inflation. Like, well, I did this and I did this.
I made yoga pants that have holsters.
No,
But
Candace does this, and the problem with it, and the reason why she needs to shut up and go away, is because you can't deny, like, black people are not trying to say that Gavin George Floyd is a hero, and we're not trying to say that he wasn't a criminal. But what we are trying to say is that just because he was a criminal in the past doesn't mean that you get to judge him on that in today's present day.
But even
Right?
if he
He
were a criminal
served.
in today's present day, let's say he were,
Yeah.
jails are filled with murderers and rapists and, God
Yeah.
forbid, pedophiles. Like, jails are filled with these people. We have a process. We're not North Korea.
Yeah.
So,
I think the
like,
process could be better. I'm just saying that.
of course, of course.
It's
So
terrible.
when you try to tell me that I shouldn't feel bad because this person has a past or even a current problem, that's insane. You're being the judge, you're being the executioner, and that's not how it's supposed to work. Are
Yeah.
we gonna, like, hang people from, like, city centers?
Yeah. It's her approach is, and this is what I think. It's like, what you're not realizing, Candace, is that what happened to George can happen to you because of the color of your skin. And when you fucking get pulled over by that white cop and you say, "Oh, I'm Republican advocate Candace Owens and I'm on your side," he's not gonna give a shit,
Hmm.
right? If he is that racist cop that is not looking to actually protect and serve and make the community a better place, and he's just looking to do damage, what do you think? Just because you are who you are now off limits? You're not.
Yeah.
The problem is that there are individuals within our society that as soon as they see the skin color, they've already passed judgment on you. And
Mhm.
that's what she's not talking about in any of her videos.
No,
What
and
she
she's
did.
making it worse because she's validating those feelings. She's
Oh,
telling me that they're
absolutely.
right, that there is a problem with the black population, that there are more crimes. Look, that statistic is not a false statistic. That statistic,
Yeah.
just numbers wise, is true. More violent crimes do are with that population. But what I'm saying is why. You always
Yeah.
have to ask the reason. They're not more violent as people. No, it's
No.
the socioeconomic factors of it.
It's
So
actually
when
more than
our
that. It's more than socioeconomics, because if you actually, and I was saying it, I was talking to, it's on another podcast where I was in this quantitative analysis course, and I ended up doing this essay. And what the essay outlined is that even when Black people do things that are designed to help promote them,
Mhm,
there are shifts that hold them back. So, for example, education in the United States, right? In order for me to get a decent paying job, especially here in Boston, that's so competitive, every school wants you to have a 3.5 GPA, which converted into Canadian talk is you have to be an A student
mhm,
in order for you to get a job.
mhm.
And if you're not an A student, they won't hire you. And you have to go to one of the top 15 schools in the country. And
Yeah.
to go to one of those top 15 schools in the country, you are starting at $50,000 a year.
Yep.
That's in state, right? Left alone going out of state. But these Black people who they still want to get educated, right? They still want to leave they don't want to be part of that stereotypical Black people need to be drug dealers and musicians and athletes and entertainers, and we could be, academics. A lot of them go the academic route, and then they realize halfway through that I'm never going to be able to afford this, right? There's a rapper, his name's Trinidad James, and he had the most interesting interview ever where people look at him and they're like, why do you rap the way that you do? He's like, well, because it makes money and I have bills to pay,
Mhm.
right? I've got a kid, I need to make sure I feed my child. It's like, well, don't you think you should speak a little bit different? He's like, no, it's what the media wants, and I'm going to give them what they want. He's like, well, why don't you just go to school? He's like, I did go to school, but I also realized that, number one, I was going to school for business, and I already had a business, and my business was successful. So I didn't think about spending more money on something that I'm not going to need.
Mhm.
And that's a question that every Black person has to ask themselves when they get to the graduation of high school and say, am I in a position to afford $200,000 in debt
Yeah.
when you already don't come from good money?
Yeah. And this, I mean, this buildup of wealth has taken place over, you know, 200 years, over
Yeah,
decades and decades. So again, the system is failing a large
absolutely.
portion of the population, and
Absolutely.
it's proven that certain things might lead people to crime, or certain, failings of our systems cause people to do certain things. And to just spew out a statistic like that without context
Yeah,
just makes it seem like there's a racial genetic prevalence in violence, which is insane.
it
That's
is. But
insane.
that's
Also,
that's what she won't talk about, though.
no, because that's what she wants you to believe. And so when she discusses actually the numbers with 19 white people, I think you said, and 9 Black people have been killed.
Yeah.
So what I actually found interesting in that is, let's discuss at what point they were killed. How far was the escalation allowed to go when it came to that white person, and how far was the escalation allowed to go when it came to the Black person? Was it a simple no, officer, I'm not going to comply? Or was it, I don't know, there was this story of this white woman who got, like, she got out of her handcuffs, jumped in a police cruiser, stole it, like, and they still treated her nicely and retrieved it all. It was
Oh my
such a
God.
ludicrous situation. But I was thinking, what if said person was Black? How far would they have gotten in that
Listen,
car? Would it
what's
have been
that?
shot?
What's that kid's name? His name's Dylan something. Dylan something. The kid who shot the church
Dylan
in.
Roof?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, this kid performed a hate crime, an act of terrorism
Yeah.
on U.S. soil, which by definition allows them to go in there with deadly force,
Yeah.
right? The like the you the I think the military and I could be completely wrong, but if you are committing an act of terrorism, they do have the right to go in there with deadly force and just end you. And
Hmm.
somehow that kid, when he was arrested, was armed, didn't even get shot.
No,
Didn't even get shot at.
given Burger King, actually.
Like it's what a lot of people are not talking about is the difference in videos when you see a white person being approached by police officers. I saw a video the other day of, I mean, there's so many, but a white woman who I think one of her kids was driving a car without a license or something stupid happened, or something was wrong with the registration. So they got pulled over, and she comes down, all riled up, and she's in this cop's face, yelling at him, swearing at him, pointing a finger, really aggressive. And he's just there just taking it. And I think to myself, if this was a black person, how would this have gone?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're seeing a lot of law enforcement officials not do, like, listen. And I said this, I was saying to this to one of my friends, is like, it would be a lot different if we were seeing law enforcement just shooting everybody. But they seem to shoot one portion of the population for a lot less.
Yeah.
Right.
And look, we're not saying that cop taking it from that woman was wrong. And I'm not saying them not killing Dylan Roof or not giving him McDonald's, or that most recent, sorry, it was Burger King, not McDonald's, but that most recent young male in Connecticut who had killed 2 people, and they arrested him, and there's a photo of a cop like offering him water. So
yeah, like,
I'm
what?
saying, yeah. So I think sometimes where we fail, all of us too, is this is a little bit of a whataboutism. Is I'm not saying that you treated those people correctly and you should stop doing that. What I'm saying is treat the other ones the same way that you treat
Exactly.
these guys. Yes, you should give him water. Yes, that's fine. We're supposed to be a civilized society. So even if he did
Yeah.
murder a bunch of people, he still has to go through the motion. So you arrest him. And yes, of course, if he went into cardiac arrest, we'd expect CPR, right?
Yeah, we expect, like, just because they're criminals doesn't mean that they deserve to die.
Yeah.
Right? It's the
So
reason why we're removing the death penalty
yeah, in a lot of places.
in a
Even
lot
with
of places.
the synagogue shooting, and I was reading this op-ed from one of the doctors, and it was really interesting because she was a Jewish doctor working at the hospital
Mm,
in which they took this man who just shot up a synagogue. And in her op-ed, it was really powerful. She said, "I just worked on saving the life of a man who killed my people for just being Jewish."
yeah,
So, but that's her job, right? Like
yeah,
she's a doctor. That is her job.
yeah. You're a
And I think
police
sometimes
officer. You're
we
not,
forget
like, listen. Like, that's the thing. These police officers, or some of them, forget, is that you're the police officer. You're not the judge and executioner. It's not your job to pass judgment. We have
that.
different systems in place to do that. Your job
Yeah.
is to get them from where they are to the people that they need to be in front of, so that the courts can do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and there
And
should be a level of de-escalation involved with being a police officer. You're supposed to be able to calm down a situation. You're
yeah.
not supposed to just heighten it so much worse for it to lead to death and
Oh
shoot.
yeah, absolutely. I remember one time, me and my friend, we were at a bar. We were at a bar in Yonge and Eglinton, and um, the Unicorn, if you've ever been there.
Hmm.
Uh, and there was this guy in the bar just absolutely talking trash to one of my friends. So, we were sitting down there and we're just like, okay, let's get the hell out of here, because I'm not going to fight these guys and their friends. Let's not turn this into a whole event. We're all pretty wasted. Let's fucking go home. All right, everybody go the fuck home. So we leave, and we walk out of the bar, but who's there for us? The Golden Arches, right? When you're drunk, the Golden Arches are always there for you. So we go over to the McDonald's, and of course, this guy shows up at the McDonald's. So we're not paying him any attention. We're doing our own thing, ordering and whatnot. And while we're waiting for our order, this guy starts it back up again. He starts it back up again. So we're like, all right, fuck it. Let's leave McDonald's. This guy's just, he won't stop. So we leave McDonald's. We walk out. We're walking down the street. This guy's following us again. Just talking the most trash, trying to entice us into a fight. So I go up to my buddy because he lives in the neighborhood. I'm like, all right, you go this way and continue going home. I'm going to double back because there was a cop near the McDonald's. I'm going to talk to him, let him know what's going on. So I double back to the McDonald's, talk to the cop, and I go up to him and say, hey, man, see that guy that's standing in the far distance? He's going home. See that guy that's right there that's kind of been following both him and I? This guy has been antagonizing us for like half an hour now. He wants us to fight him. We're trying to avoid him, but he's following us. Can you do me a favor and either go over there and talk to him or do something? Because we're just trying to go home. And the cop looks at me and he says to me, you better get out of my face before I throw you in the drunk tank.
Wow, that's quite the reply.
And I looked at him like, that's your response? Like, my friend's being followed and being threatened by this guy who you can see that he's walking, and this guy is like yelling and following him. Oh, bye, Chloe.
Gone. She went in to eat.
So you can clearly see that this guy is following and yelling like aggressive shit, and the cop can hear. And I'm like, well, like, what do you mean? He's like, well, he's going home. He's doing the right thing. I'm like, I understand that. I told him to go home. But the problem that I have is this guy's following him home. And I'm trying to make sure that he gets home safely because this guy clearly wants to fight him. He's like, you need to go now. Because if you stay here one more minute, I'm putting you under arrest. I'm like,
Okay.
I'll leave, but this is not productive at all.
No. And look, I understand they deal with drunk people. They deal with a lot of nonsense, but also nobody put a gun to your head and told you to become a cop.
Yeah.
So
I'm also the best drunk person. I'm very articulate when I'm drunk.
I just think the constant complaining about we're in the line of danger and this and that, it doesn't really get a lot of sympathy from me. It gets a little bit. I understand and I appreciate it because as a person who hasn't had to deal with any sort of I really haven't had to deal with racism in my lifetime so far. And look, I've always felt safe when I see a cruiser. I've always felt safe when I saw an officer, and that's a privilege. That's definitely a privilege. Not everybody gets to feel that, so I understand that. But even as someone who has always felt safe with a cop around, I will say that no, you don't get to use the fact that you deal with danger. You chose it. You chose it.
You know what? It's a real job that I respect because I wouldn't be the first guy. Like, you tell me, hey, you want to be cops? No. I'm the guy that when shit's going down over there, I'm going over here.
The other way.
It's safe over here. I don't understand the people who aren't cops and still go over there.
Yeah.
But I'm the guy that goes in the other direction. So there's definitely a level of respect that I have for those individuals who decide to go that career path because it's dangerous. Absolutely. It's high stress. But if it is dangerous and it is high stress, then number one, maybe we need to start training these guys better. Maybe 6 months is not enough to become a police officer. Maybe the psych evaluation needs to be a little bit more rigorous. Right?
There are countries, I was reading about Norway and Finland and Germany. All three of those countries have 3-year training programs. So they're different. One of them is a degree program. I think it was Finland. I could be wrong, but it's 3 years. It's 3 years of training, and a small portion of it is combat training. Whereas I think in the United States, it's the majority. That's what you're training. And why isn't de-escalation something? So this defund the police hashtag that's been passed around, I think it scares a lot of people because they don't read into it. They just read the
Yeah.
defund and they think we're saying abolish the police,
No,
which,
no.
I don't want to live in a world without police. I
But
don't want to live in a world
but
where
there's no reason that there's a small town in somewhere in the States that just bought a tank. Like, yeah, there's this, like, that's what I mean. Like, defund the police. Yeah, you don't need a tank. This is a small
yeah,
town. You don't need a
yeah.
tank. No
Yeah,
police department needs a tank.
no, and they've done studies that whenever you give extra funds to these police departments, it ends up going for that kind of equipment. Not tanks, that's insane. But,
The shit they don't need. But
yeah,
how about this?
riot
We take
gear,
money from
oddly enough.
the police and we give it to the teachers,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We have police force. Like, I think the police force of NYPD budget is $3 or $4 billion,
Hmm.
right? Why not dial that back a bit? Make sure they still get paid the way that they do, but also make sure that the teachers are well compensated, or the schools are better. Or maybe we take $1 billion from the police officers and we put that into some sort of education, right? So now we have legitimate ways to help minorities and people on the lower level of the social economic scale get out from under it, so that like they're not coming into contact with the police, right? If you
I'd actually be better even if they paid the cops a better wage.
yeah,
I'd be fine with that. Have fewer, but pay them more and make sure that they deserve that pay because they've gone through rigorous training and
yeah, you earned it.
yeah, because they need psychological training, I think. They need to know how to
Absolutely.
communicate. They need counselor training. So
Yeah.
that defund means reallocate, really.
I
That's
believe I believe in it. I think if you work harder for something and you know that it's going to be taken away from you and you get paid, you're gonna think differently,
mhm.
because you don't want to lose this cushy job that you had.
Someone made a fantastic point. I can't take credit for this at all. I saw it on Instagram. They said, how about instead of the police brutality case budgets coming out of taxpayer dollars, it comes out of the police pensions. Once
Absolutely.
that's happening, maybe there will be a second thought before a
Yeah.
police officer acts a certain
Absolutely.
way because it's their own bottom line.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was an interesting way of putting it
Absolutely. Because
and kind of
it'll force good cops to speak out against shitty cops and get those guys off the force.
yeah,
Because the biggest thing that they say within the police force is that they protect their own. and it,
yeah,
and because they protect their own, it makes it harder for those who see bad cops to speak out and identify those guys, because there's like these hidden rules and codes to being a police officer, which
yeah.
I truly believe. But we need to find a way to do that, because it's not working. It's clearly not working.
No, for sure.
It's not
Oh,
working.
I just remember there's one thing that I forgot to touch on with the whole Candace Owen thing. One thing that they all say that absolutely drives me insane is
What is
when
it?
people say black on black crime.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because here's why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're trying to say, I'm black, but I'm better than you.
It's
Right? They're trying to differentiate themselves from other black people, and they're trying
yeah,
to position themselves higher.
but it's
But
not because white crime. Obviously, every race has criminals.
yeah, it's
Now,
just crime. It's just crime.
population, yeah. So do you ever hear someone saying Asian on Asian crime or white on white crime? It's so insane that black on black crime has become part
Yeah,
of like the
it's
mainstream vernacular. Like, what does that
yeah, it's
even
part of the
mean?
cultural lexicon. Black on black crime. It's what we're
Yeah,
talking about it,
that
because
needs to go.
we've convinced people that that's a real thing. It's like, no, it's just called crime.
Yeah,
It's just
it's
called
people
crime.
committing crimes.
It's just people committing crimes, and we have to do something about it. Absolutely. There is
Of
crime
course.
that it's in every community, and it's unfortunately it's something that has plagued the black community for a long time. But I think there's bigger things going on there. It's not that black people just wake up every single day and criminal. criminal. No, right? They're not, you know what I mean? Like there's not a hospital just like pumping out black kids and just fucking criminal, the next LeBron James, a Tiger
Yeah.
Woods, a criminal again. This one looks like a smart criminal, cyber fraud. You know, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening in the black community. What's happening in the black community is that there are significant hurdles that black people have to jump over just to feel that they are on the same playing field as white people.
Yeah.
We're not all playing the same game sometimes.
No. You
right?
have to work harder to get to the same results that somebody else really didn't. So right off the bat, it's not fair. No one's saying people don't want to work hard, but when you have to work twice as hard to get to the same results, it's
And
not an
sometimes
easy
not even get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes not even get there.
You work hard as hell and you watch other people get what you deserve. And I can't, and that's why I say it to I've said it to a lot of people when they say, oh, these protests and these riots are disgusting. And I say, well, I can't judge them. Can't judge these people for going out and destroying. I can't judge these people for going out and looting and setting things on fire. And the way that, yes, people are acting irrationally and the violence isn't good. But imagine you for 100 years have been told that you are a lesser citizen and a lot of people in your family are dying for no reason, and you feel trapped under this pressure and this thumb of oppression. And on one point, it's just that anger, that raw emotion just boils over.
Yeah.
And
when we're done this, you gotta go watch the Chappelle.
I will. I have to.
That you're saying right now, you're gonna have to.
Yeah, because he sees it.
Bringing up.
You can't. I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna go watch it tonight. That's one of my plans tonight. I'm gonna get drunk and watch it. But yeah, you can't listen. Black people have been trying to be heard for a long time, and no one's been hearing us. So if you don't, and we have a saying in my family, those who cannot hear will feel, right?
Right.
So if you can't hear this, and it's been happening for a long time, well, now you're gonna start feeling it.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to take this to a different level because we're not asking for much. We just want to be treated the same way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
That's it. Doesn't seem that complex, but it's. I don't know why it's been going on this long and we haven't figured it out yet. Like I don't understand how people can just look at someone and assume, and it happens. You just get to look at someone and assume and treat them the way you want to treat them because, oh, it's black. That's why. It's happened to me. It's actually ended a friendship for me.
Really?
Yeah, it's ended a friendship. There's 4 guys that I don't talk to anymore because of they assume something about me. They assume these guys assume that I went to someone's house and stole his snowblower. Right? Absurd. First of all, number one, why the fuck would I steal a snowblower? What? Why would I do that shit? I live in an apartment at the time. What am I doing with a snowblower? So what happened was he had this grainy footage from his home security that a black guy showed up.
Of course it was you.
And stole his snowblower, and the first thing that he came to was, oh, it's you. And I'm like, number one, that's a snowblower. This guy, if you've ever stood in front of a snowblower, you would understand how tall a snowblower is, and the snowblower for me, because I'm 6'3", comes down to my waist. But this guy's tiny. The snowblower comes up to his chest. And I'm like, that's not me. He's like, no, it is you. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that's me? Were you around me?
You had to prove that.
Right?
Nobody else had to go through that out of your friends.
Right? These are guys who were my friends accusing me of stealing a fucking snowblower. So he's like, oh, well, if you were there, then you got to prove that you were someone, because I think it was during the playoffs. We were watching a Raptors game at my buddy's place. So I had to call his girlfriend up and be like, hey, this is going to be very weird, but where was I last night? And she's like, what? Just say where I was last night. It's like, you were here watching a game. Why are you asking me this? Nope, no reason. Still doesn't accept that as an answer. This dude stands outside my home, starts threatening to come inside my house and attack me. Yeah, all the while, these guys are my friends. And I just looked at it like, wow, I have to go through. I've only been to your place once in my life, and I didn't even step inside. I just met you on your front lawn. I have no clue where it is. I know it's in the neighborhood, but I have no clue where it is. And the amount of circles that I had to jump through just to prove to this guy that I didn't steal his snowblowers, and guys who I thought were my friends who were going to help rationalize it and convince this guy that he's being an idiot, take his side. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, you have footage. Bring it to the cops.
Yeah.
Bring it to the cops. If you think it's me, bring it to the cops. They'll take a look at it. They'll take a look at me, and then they'll realize that you're an idiot.
The
All right.
fact
It'll
that
be
he even has to go that far.
and that right there is, and it brings us full circle to back to what you were talking about with your relative that works for Google, is that we get pressed for
Yeah.
so many things just because of the color of our skin. And then when something minute happens and we overreact, it's not just we're not just Black people overreacting. We're people who are constantly having to jump through hoops just to sustain, or just to, be able to live.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's
Of
not
course,
fair,
it's a constant poke, right? It's just constantly being poked.
right? It's
And it might not be a hard press one time, but if you do it 300 times,
right
you start to feel it.
over the
So,
course of years,
yeah.
And what I tell a lot of, I have a friend, and she was asking me, well, what does she do? How does she, because she feels as though she needs to speak out against it, but she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't want to seem disingenuous. And I told her, do whatever feels right. If it feels right for you and you want to be part of the movement, do what feels right, because it'll be authentic and you'll be able to get behind it and you'll be able to care. And that's how you'll make effective change.
And I think it's like the discourse aspect of it is important, not to bring up like a very silly case, but because I am in Canada, there is this kind of ludicrous little thing happening right now. I don't know if you're familiar with Jessica Mulroney. She's, I mean, she really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. She
I
married
know that.
Ben Mulroney's son, and she's like an Instagram girl, and
Yes,
uh,
yes. I'm like,
she
why
has
do I
her
know
own
that
like
name?
show. Yeah, she has like a reality TV show. She's a stylist or something. Like it doesn't even matter. But she had very poor interaction with a black influencer,
Uh-huh.
in which publicly, I honestly, like, I don't know the whole story because it was just one of those things that felt like reality TV and it was just boring me. But at the end of the day, what happened is this influencer released some of the messages that were going back and forth with her, which were not very nice, a complete bitch and a huge brat. But honestly, when you read them, I can't say for sure that this has anything to do with race. What I can say is that she's a bitch, and she would have
Uh,
acted like that to an Asian person, to
yeah,
a white person, to any other race. Like she's just a bratty bitch.
yeah.
But now her show's been canceled. A lot of things have been taken away. She's been dropped. I'm not saying I feel sorry for her. What I'm saying is, what was achieved? Did she learn from that mistake, or
No,
did she
no.
learn that her livelihood was taken away, and if anything, just to be more angry at that black woman for it?
Yeah.
So
Well, then
wouldn't
you
it
get all those
be better?
those disingenuous apologies, like, well, we didn't know. Like when they,
Yeah,
when those when you see them on TV, they get brought up to a podium and they have to be like, we didn't know the comments that we made hurt or affected people in this manner. We are
yeah.
sorry. These are not the actions that yeah, all that nonsense. Yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah. And it's already been released. There's a big PR apology that's been released with her saying that she agrees with Bell Media dropping her. And I just thought in my head,
Just trying to
would it
save
not have
face.
been better? Of course, Would it not have been better if that other person who was Black, instead of kind of canceling her, had asked her to, let's say, have a public chat to discuss the things that were bad about what she did, to discuss the things that were obvious privilege that she showed, and to kind of bring her on as an ally and to help understand. I know this is sounding like a little hippy dippy Pollyanna type of stuff,
No, I
but
mean,
I
it's a
just
good
think
point.
completely canceling her achieved nothing. She's still a rich woman who's married to a Mulroney. Like, she's fine. She's gonna be fine.
Yeah. Um, that's a good question. That really is a good question. Is it effective to just cancel her? Well, I think it's good to cancel her because
Hmm.
people need to learn that there are repercussions for your actions. Like, you just don't get to do whatever you want and get away with it.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think that just accepting the whole, because her apology letter, I guarantee you she did not write that, right?
Oh
Someone
my
who
God.
works in her, yes, someone who works for her PR team wrote it, told her to post it on Instagram, that kind of thing. Um, but I think, yeah, bringing those people to explain their actions and not necessarily make them an ally. I mean, if they do become one, that's better, but just going out and be like, hey, do you understand why this is happening? It's
Yeah.
because you are a self-entitled bitch. And we need less of that in this world.
Yeah.
Like, we need more. Listen, if there's one thing, and I'm going through, I would say I'm going through a transition myself of, like, I do yoga every day, and it's becoming a very big part of my life now. But what
Yeah.
I've started to learn from it is that you need to sometimes stop, slow down, and focus on your mind. Focus on, you know, clear out all the noise, clear out all the background noise, focus on yourself, focus
Yeah.
on something that you can do today to make yourself a little bit better, or
Yeah.
or to make yourself a little bit happier. And don't listen to the nonsense, because the nonsense is going to fuel other nonsense.
Yeah.
And then when you start thinking about yourself as the alpha a little bit too much, then you deserve everything and everything needs to come to you. And that's where you get that Jessica Mulroney, where she's been winning for years, right? She's
Yeah.
been winning. Like, can you imagine just been winning for years, and then somebody comes up to you and tries to tell you how to live your life? No, 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 no. I figured it out. Don't you see all this? Don't you see all the money and all the things that I've accumulated over the course of my life? I'm right. Right? All these people that don't have what I have are wrong. They need to be more like me. I'm the right one. But that's not always the case. You may have had other circumstances that help you get there. Doesn't
Yeah.
make you right.
No, of course. So yeah, I get that. I get the consequence factor of it, but
Yeah,
I do wish there was one step further. So you were canceled, the consequence. So now you know what it's like. But should you just be forgotten and that's it? You just go on about your
no,
life
no.
afterwards
I
and
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like, you shouldn't allow these. You know what I mean? Donald Sterling, dude told his wife he's not allowed to take. He's an NBA team owner. The Clippers told his wife she's not allowed to be friends with black people, and not allowed to
hmm
take pictures with them or whatever. And then the NBA took his NBA team away from him, and then he just disappeared. But these people shouldn't just get to disappear. Like, you need to answer for that shit. Like,
yeah,
you
like
need
what's the
to,
point?
yeah. It can't just be, well, we took your team away. Bye. No, you need to now go through some sort of, like, reconstructive training, and which, but this is what I appreciate so much about some European countries, is that in Germany, they've made it illegal to be a Nazi,
Hmm.
right? So they've identified that, yeah, this shit's the problem. We're not going to allow these people to come back and regather. So if they try to do it, we're going to get them.
Yeah.
But a lot of European countries is when you do go to jail or when you do something, they just re-educate you,
Yeah.
right? And we don't do that here. We accept we allow people to define their own truths, and then we accept the fact that they have done that without asking them more questions or forcing them to adjust the way that they think.
Yeah, no, jail is supposed to be rehab in a way, right? It's
Yeah,
supposed to, you have to go through it, you have to come out as better. But I mean, people come out and repeat the offenses. The number of repeat offenses, I think the statistic is astronomical because jail
because
itself is such a bad environment. We
also
haven't
once you go to
protected
jail, you
them.
can't be a self-sustained human being. So
No, you're in this system, and absolutely, you're getting a job afterwards is near impossible. Where you can't vote. There's so many things that
yeah,
you
you
can't
can't
do.
do
Now, I'm not
anything
saying,
except go
yeah,
back to crime.
I'm not saying let's fondle let's cuddle up to violent criminals.
No,
I'm just
we should
saying
not.
there, yeah, and this cannot just be an American problem. Like Obama used to say it all the time, and I think he was so right. It was just like, sorry, do we have a monopoly on crazy? Like we crazy. So stop saying that mass shootings are just the thing that like it's just mental health. So all the crazy people just live in America.
Well, that's
Like
the thing.
it's
That's the
not a
thing.
thing.
That's where, yeah, apparently, because when it's a mass shooting and it's a white person, it's mental health. But if it's a mass shooting, it's a black person, which hardly ever happens. It's they're thugs, they're criminals.
Right. Yeah.
We need to start reprogramming people. Elon
Yeah.
Musk is going to be at the head
Which
of
is
it because that
part,
guy's
yeah,
crazy.
which is part of the allocation, right? When you give it to social services that are supposed to be for mental health and whatnot. And I think I read somewhere it would be like there are some cities that are implementing this now, some states. So when you
Yeah.
call 911 and it is a domestic issue, a
Mm.
nonviolent crime of an issue, a myriad of things that it could be, it's not an armed officer that's going to come to your door anymore. It's going to
And one
be
person has to leave.
right. So it would be people trained, people who, have master's degrees and PhDs and have seen years of training in these kind of trauma or situations that need de-escalating, and not just a cop with a badge and a gun that has been trained to, arrest and shoot, and
Yeah.
it makes no sense.
It's it'll bring a very different energy to that conversation if you're going into a domestic disturbance and you already know you're not going into it armed, so your
Right.
energy level going in, your stress is lower, you're not bringing violence, so there shouldn't be more,
Hmm.
essentially. That's definitely interesting. I like that. I really do like that. I think there's a lot more opportunities where police get called and a weapon should not be present, and they should explore that a little bit more because it's
100%. And look, like it sucks that this always has to be a disclaimer that I feel like we have to say every like, half hour or something. No, not all cops are bad. No, I don't think police don't have a hard job. Like, yes, we get it, and
yeah.
this is what happens with these conversations. Sometimes you go into it and then you feel like, oh, but I have to pause and say, I do support law enforcement. Like, obviously, I support the police. Like, it's crazy. No, I don't want a city full of criminals doing whatever they want to
Yeah.
do. But I don't know why all of these thoughts can't exist simultaneously. Like sometimes we act like our brains can only have one thought in them. Like you
Oh
either
yeah.
support the police or you support the protesters. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
It's
That's
all it's all the same. Like we're not trying to divide the people.
yeah,
What we're trying to say is you guys over here that don't believe in equality or equity, that don't believe that everyone deserves to be treated the right way, even though their gender is different, their skin color is different, they might speak another language. You guys suck, and you guys need to either change or stop being you. Something needs to happen with you guys. But the rest of us over here that want a world,
hmm,
like we're not against you to the extent of we're not trying to fight you guys and kill you guys. We're just saying, hey, you guys need to get more on board with what we're doing because this
yeah,
is the way that the world is going. And it's not, and like I said earlier on, is the greatest part about it is it's not just America right now that's talking. It's the entire world. I love that in the UK they tore down um, the statue of some guy. I don't know what the guy was. I think he was a bad guy. In Ohio, I think they tore down a statue of Christopher Columbus and what that represents.
Hmm.
So the world's healing. The world's at least trying to heal itself amongst a global pandemic, and they're seeing a lot of terrible things, and they're not going to stand for it anymore.
Yeah, and I hope, look, one thing that is a little bit disappointing, I will say about this stuff, is that the coverage when there was looting and rioting was around the clock and nonstop, and it's been peaceful for a long time now, and I'm
Mhm.
sure everybody can notice that the coverage on their feeds and on the TV have decreased quite a lot. So
Yeah,
you shouldn't, our media and ourselves included, with our posts and our passion behind something, we shouldn't prove to people that it's looting and rioting that will grasp the attention.
yeah,
We should be giving the peaceful protests the same attention.
yeah,
This could have gone very differently if people had just given Colin Kaepernick a little bit of time when he
yeah,
was trying to say it's not the flag, it's not the anthem. Look, do I think it was great that he wore socks with pigs in police hats? No, I didn't love it, but
yeah.
come on. There's worse
It's
things
a
happening.
it's amazing that we've come this far from a quarterback taking a knee,
Yeah,
and that years ago when this quarterback took a knee, it took a police officer taking a knee on someone. Say, like, wow, how that works full circle. Went from a quarterback taking a knee to a police officer taking a knee on someone's neck for us to
yeah.
realize that, like, yeah, he was right the whole time.
Hmm.
He was right the whole time.
And look, I do think that police brutality, uh, I do think it does span many races. I do think even on its own, even if we don't bring race into it, which it should, because I think it is disproportionately more, but I think even if we don't discuss race, police brutality is still a thing.
Oh
Police
yeah,
brutality at the core of it needs to be solved.
yeah,
And then on top of it, of course, we add the racial aspects, which
yeah,
are definitely a thing. But police unions, there's a lot to consider. There's a lot protecting um things that shouldn't be. And even today, look, well-meaning friends, like, don't get me wrong, these people are not racist, but I was scrolling Facebook and I was just like, it was maddening because one of my friend's husbands has been on this kind of like tear about just posting happy interactions with police officers and people.
yeah.
And I'm just like, look, but nobody is saying that doesn't happen. Like, why are you completely missing the point here?
Because we have to go
And
back to that same disclaimer, which is we're
we're
not
not
saying
the police. Like,
we're
what
not
it,
saying it. We're just trying to
yeah,
say that police brutality is bad and it needs to stop.
and it's
But
a
it's
thing.
happening to one group of people
More so.
significantly more,
Absolutely. And to deny it is insane.
right?
And then to just even deny police brutality is just even
Right.
more insane. Like,
Listen, I'm going to be equally as upset if a police officer beats up a white kid as if the police officer beats up a black kid. It just
mhm,
seems to be that the black kids are getting beat up by police officers a little bit more.
sure.
I'm going to
Absolutely.
be equally upset. But there's something going on here where one portion of our demographic is getting it a little bit more. And it
Mhm.
also forces us to now assess a lot of the bigger issues, which is this does not just stem from the police. This goes way deeper. And if we don't address it, like, this is not, if we're at a point now where we can address it, we can heal, we can move forward, and we can make effective change. If we do not address this, if we do not make changes, this is not going to be the last time. And
Mhm.
there will be another gentleman or lady or somewhere in the middle, but eventually we will be in the situation again. Well, there will be more protests and more looting and more riots. And the longer that we wait to make this effective change, the worse the outcome's going to be. Until now, we end up in, like, what's happening in Seattle, right? That's an experiment that's just going on, and it's going to last, and it's going to eventually fizzle itself out and go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we continue the way on the path that we are, what's happening in Seattle is only foreshadowing what's about to happen in the entire country, not just here in the United States, but in Canada as well, and maybe across the globe, until people start saying, well, you know what, if these police can't do their job the way that we feel is acceptable, it's time to get rid of them. And
Right.
then we'll be having serious conversations about police departments being completely shut down.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want. We just want you to do your job. Listen, if I do my job poorly, I get fired. And then, like, in my job, people don't even die.
No, it's true. With officers, they get moved. They get moved to somewhere else. It's like, look, I compared it to the Catholic Church the other day of like when the
Oh,
pedophilia
yeah.
stuff really came out, and you looked, and these bishops were just moved
Moving from
to another
church to church to parish to parish. Yeah.
for what? Like, what are you doing? So when you're doing this with police officers, you're just moving them to inflict this insanity on another population. Like, why
You're not
would you
solving
do
the problem, you're just moving it. And not only that too, but I also think about that not just within like the Catholic Church, but in the police force, like, because both of them, I just think, wait, aren't you allowing this person to now go somewhere else and download their negativity onto someone else and then breed
Yeah,
more hate?
100%.
Like this guy who probably is a like the pedophile and the shitty cop, not saying that they're one and the same. I'm just saying that when you take them out of their situation and you move them, they might start infecting the brains of someone who didn't have that in their mind beforehand.
Right.
Because now all of a sudden, this shitty cop comes in with like racist mentality, and you have this young kid who just joined the force, and he's hearing this veteran of the force talking about, oh, you know, this is, you got to talk to the black people like this, because if you don't talk to, you know, he's subtly dropping these little nuggets into his brain. He's trying to incept the idea that, oh, this is how it's going to be. This is how I'm going to be as successful as a cop.
Yeah,
And that kid is young and doesn't know what he's doing and what kind of path this, you know, secret KKK member on his police force is trying to show him. But by the time he's made that decision and he's pulled that trigger on that young black man, it's too late.
absolutely.
It's
No, it's
way
true.
too late.
Uh, of course, and that's really what's been happening. There was another actually interesting discussion with it was a little bit of a dark discussion. We were saying uh, we were kind of looking at the pedophilia case, and we were saying surely we can't think that priests become pedophiles. That's just not a thing. You can't tell me that like there's just the thing within the priestdom that creates pedophiles. So we were like, okay, it could be X, Y, and Z, but could it also be that a pedophile
Become priests because they have easy
chooses
access to children.
exactly? So could it also be that a white supremacist or a racist person decides to become a cop because they get to exert that kind of power over somebody?
I'm not sure, but it kind of makes me feel better about being a Catholic. Slightly.
No, of course you can't say there is this religion is not breeding that the same way that we can't say that Islam is breeding terrorists. That's insane.
Oh,
I think things are insane. So
yeah.
no, I'm not gonna look at like
Every
that.
Muslim person I know is the nicest person ever.
That's good. But yeah, I just think maybe we have to look at, I don't know, some alternative thoughts as well when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Now, I'm not
listen, you
saying it's
gotta,
100% true.
Ozzy, you gotta ask more questions, and that's how we get the answer. You gotta be willing to think outside the box and ask the difficult questions, and hopefully get
Yeah.
those answers. And then,
Well,
because
that's
if
part of the problem too, though. People don't want to have difficult conversations.
listen, you gotta have them. You gotta have them, and you gotta be willing. You gotta be willing to have them. Like the one of the things that I learned from like having gay friends who didn't make it weird for me to ask them questions about things I didn't understand allowed me to understand the culture
Yeah.
better.
Uh,
And that's the thing. I felt and listen, if you are white, black, fucking whatever, ask your friends the questions that you're afraid that just ask them. Hey, be like, hey man, why does this happen? I
yeah.
don't know. I'm trying to understand. If you're gonna live your entire life not knowing, that's not gonna help you move forward. Ask the hard question. And if you have, and this person is your friend, they will give you the answer that you are looking for, and it'll probably make your friendship better because
Yeah,
you'll be able to build trust with this person
for sure. And who's a better source? You
than the
obviously
people
want,
themselves.
yeah.
Who
And
do you,
you need more than one, because what if you end up having a Candace as a friend? That's
right?
not fun.
Exactly. You don't want to, and stop learning about black people from Fox. They don't know.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
listen, if you want to learn anything, if you're trying to understand the white supremacist perspective, yeah, watch Fox. But if you're trying to understand what the rest of us progressive minded individuals who are some liberal, some conservative, still
Yeah.
progressive individuals who are trying to move this world forward, you need to get away from that. You need to go to them, ask them the questions that you want to ask, what you want to know. And friends, be willing to answer.
Yeah. And I think, and like, have an open mind without certain attacks, because I do think that us liberals don't always do ourselves favors when
Oh no,
someone
not
says
at all.
something and right
Not
off
at
the bat
all.
you're like racist, bigot, misogynist, and you're like, stop. And because those words don't even mean anything anymore because we've
No.
thrown them around so much.
Oh man, I got accused of being a misogynist once, and I was just like, "You didn't even hear what I said. You heard a portion of it."
I was accused of being a racist because I didn't agree with something to do with like Serena Williams. And I was like, oh
Yeah,
my God, this is just about tennis. I'm
yeah.
not a racist.
It's not even about. It's about tennis. It's about her form. Ozzy knows what she's talking about. She's watched enough tennis. Exactly. Don't be. I
Actually,
think yeah.
yeah,
Don't be quick to judge
yeah,
people. You know, hear people out, spread knowledge, spread information, and spread it positively. And sometimes those discussions are going to be a little bit difficult to have, but that's the part of growth, is that you walk away from a conversation with more than what you had,
yeah,
right? That's it's
yeah,
such a grand opportunity for you to approach someone that you know and learn more. Like, I had no clue what was going on in Hong Kong, right?
yeah.
Because I understood it because
Talk
I
to
can
Kay.
read, huh?
Did you talk to Kaylee about that?
Yes. But you have to ask people questions. Okay, so what is happening? Explain this to me. Explain the history of it to me, and why have we gotten here where we are? And that's how you learn. You get to ask, and it's a hard conversation to have with people because sometimes people have their side of it. Like you said, you're gonna have a Candace in your group, or a Tommy Lauren.
Yeah.
Every group has one of those, and you just got to identify it, look at them, and say, lose my number as as quickly as possible.
Yeah, look, people like that, you're not going to change their mind because those two, I don't know them personally, but those two are in it for their careers. And um, that kind of career trajectory doesn't happen unless you are that way. Like,
Yeah,
I've said this many times, I do, I mean, I am a visible minority. So
yeah.
if I opened up a Twitter account right now where I was extremely conservative, went completely, I'm Middle Eastern, so let's say and crazy about terrorism and Muslims and definitely they're all to blame and all this, my followership would skyrocket.
Because you get both ends. You get both ends of it.
100%. But if I'm just another liberal being a social warrior, there's a bajillion of them. Nobody cares. But
Nobody
if
wants another social
sudden,
warrior. We're getting tired.
yeah, if all of a sudden I'm a minority girl who is discussing, let's say, even men's rights or something asinine like that, I
Yeah.
will grow. This should be a social experience. Like, I want to do it, but it's not Harry Potter. You know what I mean?
And just come out 10 years later. It was all an experiment,
Yeah,
guys. None of what I
right.
said in the last 10 years I believe in.
She would have never, like, look, she works at a major network right now. And, like, do you
Yeah.
think she would have gotten there as a 26-year-old? Like, come
No,
on, no way. It
she
takes a
is
lot of work.
she is I don't even think she's a real blonde, but she is a blonde white girl who played that angle to a
Yeah,
perfection.
and they all owe Colin Kaepernick. They owe their careers to them because both of
Oh
them
my
really
God.
went viral
Yes.
with rants about him. That's what
Yeah.
like really did it. Yeah.
Listen,
So
We got to figure that out. I got to I got to get one of my like reckless friends. It's like, all right, man, this is what I need you to do. Just go out there and just post all these. I'm going to write the tweets for you. Go out there and, and post it. We'll
Yeah.
see what happens. We assume that you'll become famous.
Yeah.
You're not going to like how it happens, but at the end, you'll have millions of followers and a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wonder how they sleep at night. Do you think they dive so far into it that like they're just convinced? Like it started off as I know how to like here's the blueprint for success, but they've dived so deep into the blueprint that what they thought was just a ruse is now real life and reality.
For sure. I think you lie about something enough, or not even lie, you misrepresent it to a degree, it becomes your life. Like you actually feel, and I think they even have studies about that. Like
Oh,
someone
absolutely.
has kind of made up a story, but they truly, truly and deeply believe that it's happened now. And they're
Oh my
suffering
God.
from the trauma the same way as though it had happened, even though it hasn't. So that's an interesting part of the human brain. Do I think that they're really starting to believe everything they say? Yeah, possibly.
Possibly.
Or they're just going to be like that Roe woman from Roe versus Wade, who on her deathbed admitted that, you know, the conservative lobbying group paid her off and she was pro-abortion the whole time and she made up all her reform and anti-abortion. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
Maybe we have
listen.
to get the people's deathbeds to find the truth out. Who
Yeah.
knows?
That's why you can't trust people. That's why you cannot trust these people is because we can't, like, Candace Owens as a person should not exist, but she does. And which makes you need to question the whole thing, right? They're throwing all these things in our face, right? And she's going
Yeah.
to get picked up by Fox and Fox is going to encourage her to keep on doing that. And what you're going to forget is that what she's saying may not actually be accurate or representative of what she thinks, but the representation of a network and their
Yeah.
agenda. And now you're
Also,
going to
look,
see it.
I feel like Malcolm X discussed people like Candace Owen uh, in a way that I myself don't feel comfortable saying. Malcolm was very free with some of the words and terms that he used.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I think there's a clip that I'm sure you've seen, but I'll send it to you anyway after this
Please
discussion.
do. Please do.
Yeah, in which he discusses the two different kinds of slaves that existed at that time and how one was in the home with the masters and they got to eat the same food as the masters and they got to dress in
Yeah.
the same clothes as the masters,
Yeah.
and it gave them a little more of a superiority complex. Now, was it actually a complex, or was it that they learned that this is a way to survive and they were using it? So I'm not blaming those people because it could be either or, but
Mm-hmm.
he said, you know, what would happen is, let's say they're in the fields, there were some rumblings about revolt or anything like that. The master would then go with
Mm-hmm.
this other black person who was higher on the totem pole of slavery, which is insane. And
The
they
food chain of
would,
slavery.
they would take those thoughts out of the brains of the ones who wanted to revolt, and because it was coming from one of their own, it was easier to swallow. So look, I do think it is a bit of a stretch, but I don't think it's entirely off base to say that
Hearing
Candace.
that just sent a chill up my spine.
Yeah, I watched the clip. The only reason I came across that clip is because someone actually said this is these are the people that Malcolm X was referring to, and I
It's
watched it and
crazy.
it
It's
was
crazy psychology.
so uncomfortable, but you
Yeah.
know,
It's crazy
it was incredible.
psychology.
Yeah,
Like, cause it's, yeah, she's just doing it. But the tough part about now watching Candace Owens is like, you don't need to do that to survive. Right. You can, and that's totally fine. But also if you're going to do that, you need to not make, I don't know. I look at her and I just see a person with a superiority complex who wants to feel like she's better than everybody else.
for sure. I mean, look, imagine we're all being trolled, and she like
We
decides
could be.
all these people on the Republican side over, become the first female president, not only female, but also black woman, and then just change the world.
She could. I mean, I doubt it. But she could be. It could be like
No doubt.
she and Ashton Kutcher could be working together on one of the greatest episodes of Punk'd ever against the Republicans. It's quite the possibility. I don't believe so because, you know.
I wish, because honestly, the reality is so much more insane than the
Right.
punked version, but that
She's
is where
been
we are now.
she's too deep into it. That's the problem. She's too deep
Yeah.
in. She's starting to believe her own lies. Oh man.
Yeah.
All right, Ozzy, this has been fucking amazing. I think we
Yeah, I
like
had a great time. Thank
I
you.
I want to keep on going, but I 100% think this is the longest episode that I've ever done.
I don't know how you've gone for, but yeah, it's definitely dinner time. It's
Oh,
6:30.
I'm starving. I'm starving.
Yeah.
Well, at this time, anything that you want to like mention, anything that you want to plug right now? I always give everybody the opportunity if they, something that they're following, something that they want the listeners to go check out, anything.
I actually can't think of anything right off the top of my head. No, because there's just so much good content, honestly. I think maybe unplug from the social media a little bit. Don't just listen to other people. Maybe pick up a few books. There are some really good books on these subjects, and I
You
think
should have nothing but time.
I think sometimes it's important to do that and not just consume the media aspects of it, and try to take a step back sometimes from all the violent videos from either
Yep.
end of it.
And
Just
that's my
remove
yoga
your,
time during the day. That's exactly what I use my yoga time for, is
yeah.
to step away and just focus on me and focus on breath to movement is what they say.
There
Focus
you
on
go.
breath to movement. It'll really clear your head.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do this again. We're gonna do this again. This is not the last time. But this is great. And if anyone's listening, please once again subscribe and like and comment and all the fun things that you can do with a YouTube video. And that way I can convince Evian to sponsor me because I drink so much of their water already. I just don't want to pay for it anymore.
I'm gonna tag them.
I just drink so much of their water. Maybe I can get enough followers and views that they say, well, let's give him X amount. And I'll line them all up in the background, just Evian bottles everywhere. They're delicious. This is already a commercial happening. But thank you for coming through. And I can't wait till you come back another time. You enjoy
For
the
sure,
rest
and
of
I'll
your
send you
afternoon.
that video. Okay.
Please do. Thanks. I'm gonna put the video on the comment section of the video when I upload it.
Perfect.
All right. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Richard. Bye.